Welcome back. Today we're going to do this copy of a drawing by a German artist from 1817. His name was Julius Carolsfeld. We believe this is a portrait of his wife. So, this is a three-quarter view. We're going to begin by conceptualizing the cranium. Is my audio working? Yes. Okay, let me fix my focus here. Cranium and the face. So notice that at this stage, we are paying attention to where the jaw kind of intersects the head and how much of the cranium is behind it. And we can see that there's really not much of the cranium behind the back of the jaw in this pose. So I'm going to make a little correction in my drawing. And then we're going to look for the eye line, and we're going to relate it to, we're going to look for its angle and its height. So the top of the skull is probably about here. So the eye line is about centered on the head. We're also dealing here with some converging orthogonals, because if we go through the pupils and through the corners of the mouth, we definitely see convergence. And so using the idea of a vanishing point, we can sort of understand the whole head in perspective. So we're going to do this eye line through the middle on a slight tilt up. And even though the chin doesn't really imply an orthogonal, we're going to draw that one, and we're going to draw these orthogonals just so we have a sense of our vanishing point. The vanishing point is going to be used to draw all the features. Okay. In this classic three-quarter view, what you often find is that the leading eye is roughly centered on the head. Can you see that? And so that's a useful thing to know. We can mark this center left to right. That gives us the location of the leading pupil. And we can mark where the bridge of the nose is, and rather than understanding this in terms of the overall width of the head, we can understand it in terms of the width from the middle to here, and you can see that it's less than halfway across, maybe a little more than a third of the way, so maybe 2/5 of the way from here to here is where the bridge of the nose is going to be. And the angle of the bridge of the nose is relatively steep. It's maybe 20 degrees from vertical. We're going to mark the eyebrows, eyebrow line, another orthogonal, to help us establish where the bottom of the nose is, which is again halfway between the brows and the bottom of the chin, like that. And the mouth line is a third of the way down, and that's our last orthogonal. So those are our basic proportions. Where we're going to go next with this drawing is a little bit of shadow mapping. You can see our main shadow break is here with a secondary, a smaller shadow break inside the nose like this. So what we're going to try to do today is we're going to jump right from basic proportions to the shadow map. That's a method that we're going to be using a lot this year. The idea here is we want to get, before we commit to our location of features, we want to establish a sense of this form as a volume rather than just an arrangement of flat shapes. So those are my two main shadow areas. I better suggest a little more. I better block in a little bit of the neck and shoulders. So I'm going to do first shading. I'm left-handed. Your shading is going to go the other way if you're right-handed. And we're going to do what I probably should have done already, which is block in the shapes of the hair, because that's going to also help us. So this shape is kind of crazy. We're always looking for how can we simplify what we're looking at, and I'm going to say we're going to use this ellipse or egg shape to help guide me rather than blocking it. In other words, blocking would be thinking of it in terms of straight lines. I'm just going to think of it in terms of a big ball. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to relate the size of this ellipse to the overall head. And you can see it's like maybe a third smaller than the overall head. In other words, it's pretty large. And I'm going to indicate, I know where the bridge of the nose is, so I'm going to indicate where the part is in the hair. And I'm going to indicate this kind of hairband, which is just a little below the top of the cranium. And then I'm going to just block in. It's not a hairstyle you see a lot of anymore, is it? And we're going to, because the hair is so much darker than the skin, we're going to do a light first shading across the entire hairdo. So watch carefully. What we're going to do now, get rid of some of these annotations. We're going to experiment with eye placement just by doing a little first shading for the darks of the irises. And just a little hint of the shadow under the lid. And what I want you to understand is that you can read the direction of a person's gaze even if you're not seeing any details. Like, even if it was a foggy day and somebody was like 20 feet away from you, you'd still be able to read what direction they were looking. And so we can read the gaze of my drawing right now, despite the fact that I haven't committed yet to any exact lines around the eyes. And what you're going to see me do is I'm going to just shape these very vague little spots of dark until I'm happy with the direction of the gaze. And only when I'm happy with where these little darks are am I going to go into with any more definite detail around the eyes. You see that? And we can even read an expression, a likeness. We can read all these things before we've committed to anything. And that's what you'll see master artists do all the time, is they will put things in very soft and light and vague, and then they will only get more definite after they're confident that what they've created looks like the person and has the right expression. I'm going to do the same thing with just a little bit of dark for the upper lip. So I have not pressed hard anywhere in this drawing yet, and I don't want you to either. We're just little tiny shadow under the bottom lip. And I don't think my drawing's perfect, but I'm pretty happy with it. It looks kind of like her, and it looks like the gaze is, she's looking roughly in my direction. And I want to be happy with all these things before I've committed. So what I'm seeing now is the philtrum looks a little short. If I look back and forth between my drawing and the original, feels like my mouth is a little too high. So since I have only spent like a second drawing the mouth, I can move it like this easily. You see that? It's like, because I'm not drawing a single detail. I just have this vague half tone. I just bumped it down a little. So now the mouth looks a little more correct, but it feels like I'm running out of room for this kind of jowl form and chin. So I'm just gonna bump this down a little. And what I'm trying to convince you of is that the process of pushing and pulling these elements around to achieve a likeness is so easy before I've made any commitments to specific contours. Right? The contour is an actual definite outline of something. And the biggest thing that holds back my students is they feel like what they do is they do all their contours precisely and then they shade it in. So by the time they're adding any darks or halftones, they've already committed to the to all the contours, and it's more effective to do what you see me doing here, which is suggest the halftones and the darks before you have committed to any of the outlines. Now I'm kind of blocking in that ear shape. And you'll see that she's sort of coming into focus a little bit at a time. I studied one summer with the great teacher Michael Peary in New London, and he said that this was studying painting, but it's the same idea that as you develop a painting, it's as if the figure is emerging out of a fog. And that's kind of what you see here. It's like very gradual emergence of the figure, and the surface is remaining very kind of open to correction. So because this is a time-limited drawing, I'm going to have to commit to my basic forms now. I'm going to say, yeah, this is close enough to what I'm trying to achieve. And that's when I'm going to zoom in on individual areas and focus on committing to harder outlines. So look at how clear the form of this eye is, and the eyelid, the inside of the eyelid. This is why copying drawings is often preferable to drawing from photographs, because the artist has already understood these forms for us with a precision and clarity that you'll never see in a photograph. And the simplifications that the artist uses are going to be really helpful for us to emulate. So notice here's this very faint line where the eyelid ends, and then a slightly darker line where the lower lashes are. There's always need to give a sense of this surface, and that's the main reason student drawings often look so ridiculous, is because that surface isn't portrayed at all. And there's that pupil. And you can see that because I already had established the dark of the iris and a little bit of the shading around the eye socket, my eye ends up being in exactly the right place without a lot of effort. And we're gonna look at the other one now. So here's the other eye. We need to wrap this up in 10 minutes, so let's stay focused here. And now we're going to get a little more definite on the shape of these shadows and halftones around the nose and this eye socket. This is not, frankly, an artist I've ever heard of. It's not probably what you'd call a great masterpiece, but the clarity of the forms, again, is just so remarkable. Notice that this receding nostril is foreshortened almost out of existence. We can barely see it. And this advancing nostril is is facing us directly, so it's full width. It's not foreshortened at all. And I just put this crease way too far forward. I can drop a plumb line down from the inside corner of the eye socket to help me with that. So it should be coming back all the way to here. Look at that reflected light around the bottom of the nose, right above this nostril. It's just, the form is just exquisitely well rendered. And this shadow turns into a halftone on the right side of the muzzle form. And now I'm going to get more specific about the actual contours of the line between the lips. But I already have this little perspective line to guide me, so we're going to go now. This is a variation on the Cupid's bow form where there's a little bifurcation. The center part of the Cupid's bow has a little crease in the middle of it, which you don't always see. You don't typically see it. You see this little crease right here, so it almost looks like a reverse Cupid's bow. And then she's got this little lift to the corner of her mouth on the right. Very subtle expression. Again, there's that little dark under the bottom lip. And then the bottom lip actually falls into shadow as it turns around this corner. At this point, I'm going to get a little more definite on the contour of the face, which I only blocked in before. So here's the cheekbone. And then there's a little bit of a fullness right here below the corner of the mouth. And this, another fullness at the chin. Beautiful reflected light on the throat. And the artist may well have selected this. Remember, this is his wife. He probably told her what to wear and probably asked her to put on that little, the little white collar. Because it would have emphasized all those reflected lights. The reflected light we see under the nose and the chin are all reinforced by that bright white surface of the collar bouncing the light up. So all I'm really going to have time for now is this ear. Which is probably the most, it's almost a cartoonish ear. It's not that well drawn. I'm just going to draw what I see here, very simple combination of forms, hard outline. And here's this hairband connecting the ear across here, and that's about all I think we're going to have time for today. So thanks for watching.